Now let's go behind the rock screen.
You're welcome to come on in. We'll bring out the moonshine, start telling lies and calling up the women. But no talk about racing. Come on.
Hey, everybody, here Josh with the Dirt Court Jesters podcast. Kind enough to be joined by Greg Watson, race director, co-owner of the USAC Midwest Thunder Midgets. Mr. Watson, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Josh. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you could come on. Am I correct in that you and Mr. Chuck Taylor founded the series in 2015?
Yeah, that's correct. He and I are partners in this. We are an independently owned organization, but we have partnered with USAC right from the very beginning back in 2015. I think about it as kind of a branding arrangement. We're allowed to use the USAC name and logos and so forth. We have access to some of their resources. Richie Murray, their public relations, social media guy, is a great resource to us. We've certainly had help from others there along the way in building out what we do. But they don't own this. Chuck and I do. And ultimately, it comes back to us to make the decisions and call the shots on where we're going with all of it.
So I'm curious, and I know I've heard, I think I've heard the story, but for those who haven't, how did the USAC Midwest Thunder Midget series get started?
Yeah, so if you're familiar with the USAC Ford Focus series that started, probably early 2000s, at least out on the West Coast, and grew and became a great thing. You know, there was tremendous participation across the country, certainly here in the Midwest with the Indiana-based group. You saw great car counts, great interest in that, and you know, the folks that created that back in the day out in California were really trying to find a lower cost alternative to midget racing as opposed to the national level. How do you get people involved without having to spend that big money? So Keith, the guy that came up with the concept, took a stock Ford Focus motor and modified it for use in the midget, but it was all bolt-ons, right? So the internal motor was completely as it came from Ford as OEM. So it was very durable and had reasonable performance and a extremely light car. So very competitive, good racing that really gave people an opportunity to participate in midget racing that might not otherwise have been able to. So that grew. I wasn't involved in those early days, so I can't really speak to what went wrong along the way. But by the time Chuck and I got involved around 2012, 2013, in terms of buying Focus cars, car counts were down pretty low here in the Midwest, in Indiana and Ohio. And that was disappointing for us. Obviously, we had the cars, right? But our good fortune was that Mount Pillier Speedway in Mount Pillier, Indiana, had created the Mount Pillier Midget Series back in 2012. So Harold, the track owner, and Brian McAvoy, the marketing director for Mount Pillier, kind of put this concept together of we'll bring together open midgets of all types. So the national cars, the Focus cars, lightning sprints, basically an open rule book in that regard, put them all out on the track. And at the time, Mount Pillier had a little less banking, was prepped a little drier, so it tended to slick off. And by the end of the night, you know, all three of those cars, regardless of what you had, you had a chance anyway. Obviously, the national cars are still going to, you know, have some benefits to them. It grew through 2012, 2013. We were at the point where by certainly 2014, we were getting 20 plus cars every race. That wasn't a weekly thing there at Mount Pillier, maybe 10 races a year. But we had good car counts, and it was pretty evenly split between what I'll call the national cars, which in my mind, that's the custom built engines specifically for midget racing. And over the years, there's been a lot of those, right? The Volkswagen version, the Chevy 2 version, and then we went to the Pontiacs and the Gertie Chevys, Gertie Fords, and now we see the Toyotas and the Stantons, the Mopars and the like. But so I would characterize what you saw at Montpelier as like the older National motors, and then the Ford Focus and the Lightning Sprints, the motorcycle powered midgets. And it was about 50-50 split. So I'm giving you a long answer to your short question.
That's all right.
Some idea what you're in for here for the next little bit.
No,
But
good.
my thought at that time, and I approached USAC with this conversation, was Harold and Brian are helping bring midgets back in Indiana. If you were around midget racing at all in 2012, the national level was even struggling for car counts. There wasn't a whole lot of midget racing going on around the country like there is today. I wanted to see that continue to grow. I wanted to create some kind of incentive for the Focus guys and the Lightning Sprint guys to continue to participate there at Montpelier. Because if they all got discouraged and walked away, now Harold and Brian are back to having 10 cars. Nobody wants a 10 car field. So what I proposed was an idea for USAC to get involved and basically sponsor a points fund, kind of like what Attica and Fremont does, right? There's the track points fund, but then there's also historically there've been a couple of different versions of this extra money for the drivers thing. So I viewed it as a race within a race, right? Our guys were out there, they were competing, they were trying to win. On almost all nights, that was a big uphill battle, but they're still giving their best to win overall. But within there, we would recognize the top finishing, what we began to refer to as the D2, Division II midget within that group, so long as they did meet certain criteria, right? And that allowed us to continue to grow and maintain interest among our guys and have more people get in and get involved. So in 2015, Chuck and I kind of formalized all that with USAC and began scheduling not only the Montpelier races, but also going to some other tracks. And a big part of that that really helped us get off the ground was being able to work with some of the Lightning Sprint organizations that existed at that time. So we had the AMSA, American Mini Sprint Association, out of at the Waynesfield, Ohio track. There was a Southern Ohio group that raced down at Jackson and Atomic. There's the MMSA, the Midwest Mini Sprint Association, that's still doing great today. So we co-sanctioned some races around the Midwest with those guys. And at that point, I think the Lightning Sprints probably had a little advantage over us, but that helped us really get a start and lock in with some of those track promoters around the country, and that's why I got the ball rolling.
I'm curious, and I'm glad you kind of expanded on that, specifically as far as USAC getting involved. Was that a lengthy conversation? Like, did they have to be convinced to jump on board, or was it something that it didn't take long and they saw what was there and they were happy to hop on?
I'm not sure if I'd characterize that exactly either one of those, but at the time that Chuck and I got involved, the race director for USAC over the Ford Focus group, as well as the quarter midgets, he was getting pulled in a lot of directions, was Eric Rankin, a longtime sprint car racer up at Attica and Fremont, grew up in northern Ohio. His son was involved in the Focus series. He moved out to Indianapolis, went to work for USAC, and was trying to grow that, as well as their new quarter midgets. Previously had been affiliated with the Quarter Midget Association, QMA of America. USAC started their quarter midget group about the same time we started in around 2015. Eric is who I'd talked to about the Montpelier idea in 2014, which, by the way, we didn't actually end up doing. There was just some contractual things with USAC affiliated with Hoosier. We had to mandate a Hoosier tire. The Montpelier guys weren't comfortable with that. So we put it on the table. It didn't go anywhere. I remember Eric inviting me to stop by the USAC booth. I guess that would have been December of 14. Said he wanted to talk about 15. and somebody he wanted me to meet. And so I show up at the booth, and he introduces me to Chuck. So hadn't really interacted with him prior to 2014. But his idea was, you guys have this idea, trying to bring this thing forward. We want to work with you. So it was kind of like, wow, that's flattering. The USAC is interested. And at that point, I think they kind of saw the handwriting on the wall with the focus thing, and we're phasing that out. So we worked together initially with Eric, and then Eric moved on from USAC. And so all of a sudden, here's Chuck and I sitting there. It's like, oh, we had this thing, and we were kind of excited about it. And now Eric's gone. What do we do? So we reached out to USAC leadership. Actually had an opportunity to sit down with Kevin Miller, pitched how we viewed this working, and asked for his permission to continue to use the USAC name and to work with some of his folks. Back then, Dick Jordan was a big part of all that, as well as helping us publicize the series. So he agreed. We started off on that path, and we're still there today. It's been a good partnership.
If someone was wanting to either race with you, or if you're trying to pitch somebody to come to more of your races, what is one thing, I guess, on both sides of that what would be the first thing that would come to mind? You say, okay, this is what I'm pitching to this person, whether they're looking to race with you guys or coming to a race as a fan.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is probably not exactly what you're thinking, but one of the challenges early on was really being very focused on, ironic word, I'm sorry, having very clear intent on what we wanted that series to be. And I think that was something that challenged others across the country as they were trying to go down the same path. So we had those Ford Focus cars. We had the Lightning Sprints involved. In other parts of the country, there were other motor packages coming about. The Ford Focus package, there was a company called Scream, Kevin Ayeb created out in California. He was supplying all those Focus motors. And at that point, they'd been around for a while. Those were 10, 12, 15-year-old motors. So the Ford Focus thing was, you could see the handwriting was on the wall with the motor package too. And USAC actually did some work around a Honda motor that came out in, I think, 14. So you had the Focus, you had the USAC Honda. And then in other parts of the country, you had Chevy Ecotechs that were starting to pop up. And there's a lot of different Honda motors out there. So there was some of which variation of the Honda motor is going to be acceptable. So we weren't the ones that came up with the initial D2 Midget rule book, but we took that, blended it with the USAC national rules as it pertained to chassis and safety and all of those sorts of things. But, had this, what I'll call a generally accepted D2 motor package. But we had those guys out there, had an old Chevy 2 motor, had an old Gertie motor. It's like, you guys don't have all that much less horsepower than we do. Why can't we participate? And that was a hard conversation because, racers, right? If we allow the Gertie in there and he does just a little bit better than we do, then everybody's like, well, I got to go get one of those old Gertie motors and get rid of this Chevy or this Honda or whatever. So, from day one, Chuck and I prioritized teching the cars and making sure that the cars were legal to what we were trying to do. And unfortunately, we did have to turn some people away and say, you don't fit our criteria. You can still go race at the USAC national level, but I get that that's challenging. So there was kind of this evolution of the national cars, the D2 cars, and the stuff in the middle. And unfortunately, most of those middle cars of either those guys have gravitated towards us with a different motor package, a legal motor package, or, they've had to spend more money and go at the national level. But, all in, at the end of the day, a lot more midgets running around, certainly in the Midwest, but California, other parts of the country, Illinois as a huge group. You're seeing the Extreme Series come in at the national level through the World Racing Group. PowerEye continues to have their series. So, any given night, you might see 100 to 150 midgets running somewhere in the country, and that certainly wasn't the case before. So I don't know that that's really your question, and sorry if I went down a different path,
No.
If I'm going to pitch the idea to someone, someone said, why would I want to get involved in what you're doing? In my mind, we're not replacing the national midgets. We never will. Those cars are awesome. I love them. I have since I was a kid. And I'm not trying to take anything away from that. And I don't believe we have. If anything, I think we've helped because we've brought more people into the sport who have now moved on and are a part of that. But for the regular grassroots working guy who wants to go racing in something, I think we're a viable option for those that have interest in open wheel because of the restrictions around the engines and the cost savings attributable to that. So cars are basically the same. A lot of our guys bought chassis rollers from the national teams, and they put our engine package in it. Use equipments today because of the entry. Go to the Chili Bowl, there'll be 60 cars for sale there every January, right? But a lot of the classified pages on social media, you can find a lot of reasonably priced, safe, quality equipment. You put that engine package in. And the thing for me, my son and I actually bought a Fontana, which was one of those generations of midget motors that were popular for a while. And we raced it, I don't know, half dozen times. And we threw a drive belt and the oil pump stopped and it locked up the motor, and I'm getting estimates and it's going to be $9,000 to rebuild that motor. And I'm thinking, we might throw that belt again next time we go out, right? We'll have a kill switch on it for sure. But still, it's like something could happen to that motor and I'm out another $9,000. There's a lot of different ways. I won't get into the whole cost structure of ours, but because we're using those stock internals, the long blocks, and we're bolting on all those pieces. My worst case scenario, if we go out and we blow up a motor some Saturday night, I can run to the junkyard. I can get an Ecotech Chevy for $800 to $1,500. Strip off all the stuff we don't need anymore, bolt on all my stuff back on it, and we'll be at the track again on Saturday night. I'm not spending $9,000-10,000 to get it rebuilt to do that. Now, some may say, well, that's a junkyard motor. Well, our experience has been that, certainly you got to change timing chains. There's some things you want to do to freshen that up and all. And the more you do, the better it's going to be, right? But within the rules, there's not that much variation if you find a decent used motor that's not outrageously high mileage. But you could rebuild that back to stock, but you could rebuild. There's places that sell refurbished Ecotech Honda motors, and there's builders out there. So I know when we talked earlier, like I told you, my day job is in the insurance industry. It still makes me laugh just to tell that story I just told, that I'm going out there and pulling a motor, and then I'm going to, tear the whole thing down, and then I'm going to put another motor in. That's, like I always say, if I can do it, anybody can do it. So,
Well, and that kind of covers a couple questions that I've also got lined up is, you talk about guys that can use it to progress if they're trying to go to the national level, maybe jump up to a bigger car, or like you said, the guys that work Monday through Friday and they just want to go to the track and have a good time and race. So that's kind of what helps set you apart from the other midget series, specifically the national series. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and to be honest, when I think back about the Focus series, that that series became known as a developmental series. That wasn't Keith's originally idea when he put that together out in California. It was the same kind of thing, grassroots guys having fun, but we're all racers, right? And at some point, these things evolve. And, the old Focus series, it was prestigious to win the National Focus Championship or the Indiana Midwest Championship. That helped a lot of people further their careers, and people see that and they say, well, okay, I'm going to do that, but if I'm going to compete with them, I'm going to have to spend a lot of money. That was not the intent that Chuck and I had in the beginning. Like I'd said, it was just for the grassroots guys to have a viable way to I'm not going to say cheap, but affordably go midget racing, and be able to participate in all that. So our goal has always been cater to the grassroots guys who are going to be in your series, hopefully for a number of years, until life gets in the way or whatever, But we got people coming back in that used to race and want to race again. We've got people that have never raced and buy cars and participate with us. But the quality of the competition and the performances that these guys have put on now for the 10 years, and it's grown, each year gets better and better. We have had drivers come in and say, I want to go on this path to become a nationally recognized race car driver, but I'm going to spend a couple of years in your series and get that experience. Because I do agree with you, even at the national level with the midgets, there's a certain aspect of it's a developmental series to go on to the next big thing, whether it's NASCAR or whatever, right? A lot of people have spent a lot of money trying to give their kids those opportunities. And I think in some cases, the kids weren't ready to go to a national midget coming out of quarter midgets or micro sprints or whatever. So we're that in between. Yeah. The kid that's had a good career in quarter midgets, excelled in that, has maybe ran micros for a few years, or we've got kids coming straight out of quarter midgets and have excelled. They can do that. They can come here and they can move on. So Jacob Denny was the first one to do that a few years back, went to the national level, has really done a fantastic job at the national level. Last year, we saw Zach Weigel run a national series schedule along with us as well. A lot of racing for the Weigel family. But he ended up Rookie of the Year at the national series. So we were really proud, to see one of our members have that kind of success. Cale Coons, Jerry Coons Jr.'s son, spent some time with us, did a fantastic job on our cars. I'm sure he's going to do well. He's moving on next year to, a national schedule and some sprint car races. But having Cale and Jerry a part of our organization was great. Hearing things from Jerry's perspective. Again, Chuck and I came from a different background than Jerry Coons Jr. But to have him give us some advice and some suggestions, and he's looking at it from a professional racer's perspective, which is great because Chuck and I don't think that way. Sometimes we filter that. It's like, I get why Jerry wants us to do that, but that ain't what we're all about, right? So, but he was always good about that. He's like, I understand what you guys are trying to accomplish here. I'm just giving you suggestions. You decide what you need to do. So that was very cool.
You bring up an interesting point, and I'll kind of tie this into some other conversations that I've had, kind of going off topic here, but touching on what you just said is how Jerry was willing to give you guys some advice, and you could take it or leave it, right? The openness and the camaraderie in dirt racing, whether it's midgets or late models or what have you, is to me is something that sets dirt racing apart from other types of major sports. It's just, I'm sitting here talking to you, for example.
Yeah.
In July, I'll be at Eldora at the King's Royal, and if I wanted to walk up and talk to David Gravel or Donnie Schatz, you can do that. this is a conversation I have time and time again with people. Like, that's just the coolest thing about dirt racing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've certainly experienced that a number of times throughout the years. But I think the first thing that comes to mind for me was when you said that is, we had grown and I felt pretty good about where our series was going into 2020. We had a great schedule made up and, going to a lot of great premier tracks across the Midwest. And then COVID hits and everything locks down. And we all dealt with that. But, along the way, when things started opening up a little bit, it became obvious that, racetracks had a little leeway there because they weren't selling out. You could do the distancing thing, or at least the story, that everyone's distance. You're outside. So by the middle of that season, we were able to come back and start racing off. I had to start all over with the scheduling because everything had gone out the door. But we were able to come back and start to run. And I think that's when, as a group, our series really gelled and turned into a community because we were all so desperate for that at that point. The fact that we got out of our house and got to do something we loved with people we enjoyed being around, that's where we went from everybody going, having fun, racing, loading up and going home to, hey, I'm pulling out into the parking lot and I got a cooler in the truck and we can all hang out until 4 a.m, because I ain't going anywhere the rest of the week. So we might as well do it now. So, I really think that was a huge plus for us. And we've been able to carry that forward. Most of what we do, little sideline here, but most of our races are in Ohio and Indiana. But last year, Zach Weigel's family organized a race down in West Virginia for our group. So a big pre-race meal, the race that night, then an after-race party, and then the next day, like a fun day on the river because they're down in Belpre, Ohio by Marietta. And we had a great turnout. We were asking people to drive a long ways to come to this race, support a Friday night race. But a lot of people showed up and had a great time. So in the back of my mind, there's always, we're asking people to spend their money. We're asking them to spend their time. Because it's got to be something that we do for fun. We're all competitive. That's just the way we're wired, right? We're going to show up and we're going to race hard. But I'm really proud of all of our members, the way in which, stuff happens, right? Cars get together, things get tore up, people get mad.
Yeah.
We've had some situations where, feelings get hurt a little bit, but the guys and girls, we've got a mix on our series. They're great about working out their issues and still being friends at the end of the day. So, and that extends, we've got 15-year-olds and we got Jerry Jones, who I think is 73, something like that now. So, grew up, lived in Ventura, California, helped midget teams, TQs out there for years, moved to Indiana, and bought a midget, started racing with us at Montpelier when he was in his 60s. So, and the fact that my sons who are in their 30s, they talk about their friends group, right? Well, my friends group apparently ranges from 15 to 73 when it comes to our racing series. And that's fine. I should be Greg to the 15-year-olds and Greg to the 73. I'm a lot closer to Jim than I am the 15-year-olds. But, the fact that we're all friends and that's, what it's all built on.
Well, and you're pointing out something that, in addition to cost, which is obviously a big thing, right? You're pointing out something that separates your series from everybody else. You're not getting that kind of conversation, and like you explained last year with the race in West Virginia, where you guys had a pre-race dinner set up and a lazy day together, and you're not finding that anywhere else. That's a very cool team building, and it brings everybody together for, to spend time together and remember. And like you said, once you guys get on the track, things change. But
yeah,
that right there, that definitely sets you guys apart, in my opinion. That is a very cool thing to do.
Yeah, it's a credit to everybody involved. It's I when I think back of my involvement in racing, 30 some years. I mean, yeah, I remember a few of the wins along the way, but percentage wise, those weren't all that high. So there were a lot of nights we went and things went wrong. But I remember going to new tracks I'd never been to before. I remember meeting people like you're talking about, because everybody, no matter who they are, right, is open and helpful. Uh, so it's the experiences we're going with. It's not the one loss record. 24 guys racing, only one's going to win, right? You got to find a reason for everybody else to want to be there, and it's not going to be economic for us, for most racers, at the end of the day. So I think people that can have that perspective of, this is how I'm choosing to spend my time and money to have fun. So let's go have fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and the drivers are out there to have a good time. I mean, again, you said, and we all agree, whether it's racing or whatever kind of competition you want to be in, a lot of us are competitive. You talked about the 2020 schedule and how good that was. I got to tell you, I love your 2025 schedule. You got 27 races, 3 of them are non-point special events. All the tracks are really within a reasonable driving. I mean, I don't know. Is it safe to say maybe like a 4-hour radius, maybe 5? But you start off April 26th at Mount Pelier, and you wrap it up October 4th at Mount Pelier. That's your championship night. You do have a show on the 11th at Coles County, but that's not a points event. A lot of good races in there. I mean, the Stryker Memorial Limaland in May. Then you follow that up the next night with Millstream and the Fast 410 sprints. You're back at Eldora for the Family Fun Night, which is going to be a great time. Then May 22nd, Circle City with the USAC sprints. I mean, you hit a lot of different tracks, from Moeller to Waynesfield with the All-Stars, Atomic with the All-Stars and the Dean Niddle Memorial, Fremont with the USAC sprints. Like, it goes on and on. The Johnson Memorial at Paragon, Kokomo with the USAC sprints in July. Like, there are so many good races on the schedule.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, people comment about, oh, you must be happy it's the off season. And honestly, I think the off season brings with it a different sort of stress, but it is just as stressful as the race season itself, because I feel the weight of our members on my shoulders in terms of putting together something that's feasible for them, but also something that they're going to enjoy. Right. So when I think about where our members are located, I kind of think of a pin in Eldora, because that's kind of the center point, which is kind of ironic, but I actually did some work and tried to figure out, so where's everybody at, and where is that region that I need to work within? So almost all of our members are either west of Columbus, Ohio, or east of Indianapolis. We've got 2 guys in West Virginia. We've got 2 guys in Michigan, but everybody, and 1 guy in Kentucky, and everybody else is kind of within that box. So I would love to go to Michigan. There's some places up there I think would be awesome. I'd love to go back to West Virginia. I talked to the guy from Tyler County Speedway just this week down there, and Rich at Ohio Valley was very accommodating when we went there last year. So it'd be cool to go back, but I also know that that's stretching the limits for almost everybody. Originally the intent was, let's partner with a lightning sprint group that's already in that region, and we bring our guys and we bring a full field, right? And then we got to the point where it's our guys. We need to think about this as, can we bring, it's that chicken and egg thing that every series promoter has to deal with. It's like, I want to go there, but that guy's not going to sign a deal with me unless I can prove I can bring car count. But if I've never been there before, I don't know how many guys I can attract to go. So there's always just kind of that juggle. And while we're working on the scheduling, we're also working on our our marketing partners, the sponsorship for the series. It allows us to pay I feel, a very reasonable points fund. It allows us to pay bonuses, heat race wins, fast qualifier, fast time. Uh, all of those things are important to me. None of them are big dollar amount deals in terms of what we're paying out to the guys, but over the course of a 25 race season, all that adds up. So you need some good marketing partners to make that happen. So super fortunate that a few years ago we were able to connect with Performance Electronics out of the Cincinnati area that builds ECU ignition products that we use in our cars, but micros use their equipment much higher volume than midgets because there's a lot more of those out there. The tuner crowd, everybody, they've got some great stuff for all them. So they're our series sponsor. We've got a couple of big things I can't announce just yet, but we have a major chassis manufacturer that's coming on board this year that's going to provide a chassis discount deal for a raffle at the end with our top point scorers. We've got a sponsor for the first time ever for our winner's circle, kind of like the whiskey whatever guys do for I'm drawing a blank.
Whiskey Myers?
Whiskey Myers type deal, right? So that's some extra money going into the points fund as well. We got groups coming back like VMS Motorsports that's done our quick time fast qualifier every year, and that's always a highlight of every night because we put a lot on the guys. We don't have a practice session. We do a group qualifying session. The first time we hit the track, they're on the clock, and to see them be able to adapt to, in many cases, a track that's new to all of us, or at least new to them, be able to go out there and be within hundredths of a second of each other, back to like the 10th fastest guy is, to me, it's proof that it's working. People are always going to say, well, are you doing enough tech? It's like, look right here, 10 fastest guys are all within a 10th or 2/10 or whatever. That's showing you at the end of the day that the equality is there, and it's something we're always got to be persistent around. But at least I'm seeing it at this point. So there's a lot of other good sponsors. I'm not going to go down the whole list. Sound like a NASCAR driver here, but I encourage people to go out, check out our Facebook page, Midwest Thunder Midgets, USAC Midwest Thunder Midgets, and we regularly share information about all of those sponsors, and want to make sure that people give them a shot when they have needs that fall into those particular areas.
Sure. And I don't want to shortchange you here because I stopped kind of at the end of July, but I mean, you go to Moeller, you go to Millstream with the Ironman late models August 8th. You're at Lawrenceburg August 23rd, Circle City with USAC Sprint September 12th, Lincoln Park, Moeller, and Mount Pelier before going to Coles County.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, as you're listing all that off, it's like, we almost lost Waynesfield. There's like a story behind all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, my son and I were involved in lightning sprints at Waynesfield back to like 2009, 2010. So, and we've raced karts there, and we had a quarter midget race there at Waynesfield, and it's the closest track to my house in Columbus, Ohio. So when that went through some transitions the last couple of years, every year I went into the winter thinking, is this the year that there's not going to be a Waynesfield? And this year it looked like that was the case. So these things are so hard, for Rich Farmer to step up in basically March and say, I'm going to take this over on a limited basis. The same year he's starting the All-Star thing over again, and he's still got Fremont. So him and Shelly, his wife, are taking on a huge deal, and they can only do, 5 or 6 races. That means some series are going to get left out, and some are not going to get as many races as they'd like. But in my conversation with Rich, I was thankful to be able to go there for the Speed Week show with the All-Stars.
Oh, yeah.
We had talked to Larry Bowes about that before Larry retired. Rich honored that. I wanted to argue to have us more, but I felt like the right thing to do is take our one date and, work with Rich in 2026. And then, I didn't see Lincoln Park coming. I thought that that was stable, and that the strikers, not sorry, the folks that were running that before would be doing that forever. Uh, and all of a sudden that changed, and then Tommy Estes steps up, working as an extension of his role at USAC there. So we're excited to be able to go back. But Millstream's a great story. I raced there back in the 90s when it was Flag City Speedway, and then it was closed forever, and I didn't think it would ever be back. And what the Cogleys have done, Matt and Beth, they're just crazy. Challenges last year, it was probably one of my most nerve-wracking nights when we showed up there to run the Speed Week show. And there were track prep issues. They were trying to prepare 2 tracks, and people are saying, well, we'll just run the big one. It's like, we didn't plan to run the big one. I'm not saying we can't run the big one, but everybody came here set up to run the small one, and that's gonna take a lot. But it all worked out. End of the night, a great race, great people, excited to be going back, appreciative of the fact they gave us 3 more. Even Eldora's a story, right? So who would have thought last year was our last time to get to spend with Jerry Gappens? We got to know Jerry through Gas City, had a great relationship. I looked to him as a mentor. The fact that every once in a while Jerry would just call me, how's things going? Tell me about what you're. It's like, wow, that's crazy that Jerry Gappens is calling me. So his passing last year after our race there, he took me up in the tower and hung out for a little bit. I'm like, I'm in Eldora's tower. Never thought I'd be here. I'm talking to Jerry Gappens. There's all these people in this room. They're heroes of mine. And to think of all the heroes of mine that have been outside that window racing on that track. So that was super cool. But, then Levi Jones steps up and takes over as the manager. And we had a great run with Levi when he oversaw the open wheel divisions at USAC. And he's another great mentor to me. And just seeing how he handles situations, how he manages his team, and the whole deal has been a great learning experience. So love to go back. The energy coming out of those grandstands on Family Fun Night at Eldora is amazing. Just all the kids, all the families excited to be there. It's a great thing that they make that track accessible at a low admission price for those Family Fun Nights, and it's cool. But you mentioned Montpelier. I mean, that's our home, right? That's where we started. And it's been through promoters and challenges and all sorts of things. But Ryan Sutter has done a great job last year. Truly a promoter, right? Everyone says dirt tracks need more than an operator. They need a promoter, someone that can really generate excitement. Ryan's generating a ton of excitement up there. So we're excited to go back. I hadn't really thought about the fact that we're opening there and we're closing there. We're excited about the season championship at the track. We're certainly excited to get things started off there. But, great facility. Feels like home. We've been going there so long. The people of Montpelier, we've gotten to know so many. And used to be great. We'd race at Gas City on Friday night. We'd hang out at the hotel in Gas City till late hours, get up Saturday morning, go over to the parking lot at Montpelier and wash the cars, prep the cars. There's some families that live near the track that had invited us in, would cook lunch for us on the grill and all that sort of stuff. It was just so cool. And so, yeah, thrilled to go back there. Moeller's been one of those places all along that has been great to us. The track's perfect. The size, the banking, the racing at Moeller's fantastic. So we're excited there. The fact that we get to run with the USAC national cars at Kokomo and at Circle City and up at Fremont, that's important to me, to put our guys in a program in front of crowds like that of similar, I want to be in front of open wheel fans, right? I know that's not always the opportunity you're going to get no matter where you are. But those are really some of the ideal situations. And I've always loved the All-Stars, and the fact that Rich is bringing that back and we can be a part of some of those races, the Millstream and the Waynesfield, and then wrapping it up at Atomic on finale. that'll be fantastic. Atomic's been great to us over the years. So I started out, and I guess the point of the whole thing is it's always change. And just when you think you got 12 good partnerships locked down with tracks, something happens and you're back at what are we going to do next year, and how do we need to think about this differently. But you got to go into this sort of thing thinking life's an experiment, man. Some things are going to work and some things aren't, and you learn from it every night, and you just try and keep getting better for the sake of getting better, if nothing else, right? So that's the goal that Chuck and I have, is give the fans their money worth, give the drivers their money's worth, give us the opportunity to have some great experiences along the way, and makes it all worthwhile.
What, and I don't know if you've really thought about this yet, and once you get closer, if that thought might cross your mind, does it have an effect on you, these races where you're running, for example, with Fast or with USAC sprints, or 3 nights with the All-Stars during Ohio Speed Week, the Ironman late models? Does that make you more nervous than a normal show would?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I have a ton of confidence in our drivers that they're going to go out and put on a good show no matter where we go. I think there's always a certain nervousness that comes with race night, but it's not, oh, we're going to blow this and it's going to go awful. It's more of, I realize there's dangers involved here, and they're here because I brought them all here, right? So I have certain feelings of responsibility for everybody that's there. So, I want to see a good race. I want to see everybody have a good time, and I want to see everybody load the cars back up on the trailer at the end of the night and, be safe. I know we're going to tear up stuff. We're one of those groups that when someone gets tore up, there's 20 people, wrenches in hand, down in their pits, getting them back together to get them back out there. That's awesome. And we've all needed that kind of help from time to time. But, we want to focus on safety. It's open wheel cars, so things are going to happen. But there is always a bit of a deep breath. Okay, we're done. The last car just rolled off the track, and it, maybe it went great. Maybe it could have gone better, but everybody is going home in one piece, and we'll come back and we'll learn from whatever didn't go right this week and try and make that better for next week and just keep growing.
If I am correct, Bryce Massengale was your 2024 champion, but the top 5 were within 90 points of each other.
Yeah, the last couple of years.
About the tech and how close the cars are together. Yes. The top 5 within 90 points of each other. You can't ask for a more competitive season.
And one of the sub stories and all that I always look at is, where's the balance between the Hondas and the Ecotechs? And we have that. There are differences between the motors. The Hondas under our rule package still make more horsepower than the Ecotechs do, but the Ecotechs make more torque. So beginning of the night, when it's juiced up in qualifying, the VMS quick time awards tend to go to the Honda guys. But by feature time, when the track's slicked off, the Ecotech guys like Massengale and Weigel and Chet Gerke and others, they really shine at that point. So at first I worried a lot about, well, how are we going to maintain this equilibrium? And, I guess the reality is we're racers. If one engine proved to be superior, then people would go to that engine, right? But at this point, we still have a pretty good balance between the two. And I think that brings some variety and some interest into the program that way. But yeah, I mean, Bryce had 2 or 3 years where he finished second in points by just that much, but what a fantastic guy. I just saw he's going to UNOH, University of Northern Ohio up in Lima, on a business degree. I think it's not one of the auto tech things, but he's got a scholarship for bowling, and he's going to a national event. He just qualified last weekend. One of the top bowlers in the nation. It's like, what? Is there anything this kid can't do? I tell him he's going to be my congressman someday, because he's just got that sort of bearing of, he makes a lap before we go out on the track, shakes everybody's hand, wishes them good luck. If he hits somebody, he's the first one over there to say that one was on me, whether it was or not. He's taking responsibility. He's apologizing. He's offering help to the other guy if he needs it. He's a great champion for our series, and I'm just really pleased that it worked out this year. But he's also a kid that, he's going to get some opportunities. He got an opportunity to race in the BC 39, and we were scheduled against the BC, because they always schedule that late. I can't wait until Spridge figures out the BC 39 with the folks at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That's a big deal. Bryce was going to forego the championship because he had made a commitment to drive a car at the BC 39, and he was fine with it. Most other kids, I think would really struggle with. And it was almost like it was, oh yeah, I guess if I go to the BC 39, I won't win the championship. Okay. It's like he's doing it for all the right reasons. A great family. His parents, his sister are always at the races. And, so that's really cool. And that's just one example. Call out him because he's the champion. But I could go right down the list and talk about, I mentioned Chet Gerke's name earlier. Chet and Tate Martz actually also races with us. They're number 1 and number 2 in the history of focus racing in the Midwest in terms of most feature wins over the years. And they both have come back later in their careers. There are older guys than those two, but they're older than most, right? And the fact that, they're coming back and they're resources to the other guys out there because of all the knowledge that they have and the experience they have, they're still very strong competitors, both of them, super competitors, but just great people to have around in the series. And again, just picking a couple of names, but there's 50 some guys that raced with us last year, and I could give you some story about every one of them that impressed me at some point over the course of the summer.
You mentioned the BC 39, and in 2025, I believe it's July 1st and 2nd. And that's kind of in the middle of a little break for you guys.
Yeah. So I would expect, in other years, when it didn't conflict with ours, my sons and I went there. It's a phenomenal, I almost feel like we're just blessed, right? Driving my truck in that tunnel, pulling our race car on the trailer behind us and coming up, and there's the infield, and you're driving on the road course to get over to the BC 39 track and parking there and looking around. I think for me, the Indy 500 was the very first thing, when I was a really little kid, listening to it on the radio with my dad and then watching the telecast at night, the way it used to be back in the day, the 60s and early 70s. Those guys were my first racing heroes. And I didn't even realize that those same guys were over at Eldora, just down the street from where we lived at the time. Would have been nice if my dad had thought of that, taking us over there. But, just to be a part and say you raced at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, even if it's in a midget, in a little dirt track in the infield, is still a phenomenal experience. And we get to do that with the package that we've got put together, right? Because that little track, we can be fairly competitive. We've got maybe some takeaways from the national guys that run those cars from a skill standpoint, right? They're the best there is, but we're not that far out. We're not embarrassing ourselves out there, right? And we get to be a part of all that, which is cool. So
there's been some big names that have come through the USAC Midwest Thunder Midget Series. Are there any names that people should be looking out for in 2025? Do you have anybody new jumping on board with the series in 2025?
Yeah, we do. There was a little bit of a lull, I guess I'd say, last year in terms of new people, and that always makes you a little nervous because in my mind, it's the get busy living or get busy dying thing. You're either improving or you're falling behind. Uh, you always worry, are we at a peak? And then it's going to start turning the other way. But I was encouraged this year. We've got quite a few people getting involved. It seems like just the last week, we've had a bunch of people express interest. And, I know you and I have talked about the Piqua car show, the Race Cars and Future Stars show at the Piqua Center in Piqua. And I guess by the time people hear this, it'll be over. So I'm not giving an advertisement, but Steve Stiffel, who has done amazing things in the racing community, worked at Waynesfield, puts on this show, took a little break after COVID. Now he's got it up and going again. Great opportunity to interact with a lot of people in the racing community, and it always seems like there's a couple of people that we get a chance to talk to there and sooner or later end up joining us. So I'd have to think about it. I don't have names at the top of my head of who's new or who's going to have a breakout year. One name comes to mind, Luke Lemons. Guy came out of quarter midget racing and bought a Ford Focus car, was a little underpowered. It was competitive for what he had. He's upgraded his program. He's got 2 cars, one for him and one a rental program. He's out of the Dayton area. I think he's going to be really good this year. Mike Magic has been kind of a reduced schedule. Michael Magic has been kind of a reduced schedule the last couple of years. He's got plans to run a full schedule. He lives literally next door to Montpelier Speedway. So kind of an interesting story. Moved here from Georgia to get more involved in Indiana open wheel racing. And so, I expect him to do well. Massengill's coming back. Weigel's going to continue to run with us, as well as the Chad Boat National. That's kind of interesting, the way the National Series is kind of pocketed their schedule, right? So they have the 20 some races, but it's like there'll be 3 or 4 right together, and then they'll have a 2 or 3 week off. So Zach's been able to come run with us quite a bit. He's always going to be competitive. So yeah, I should have made a list beforehand. I hate to leave anybody out, but I think, competition's not dropping off. It's only getting better. My sons would be mad if I didn't mention, both my boys will be out there, and they're both hoping to have a good year as well.
Right. John and Alex at 3W Racing, is that correct?
Yeah. Alex has been at this, well, they both started at age 5 and quarter midgets. But it was always kind of we'll do the quarter midgets when we're not doing something else. So they did the travel baseball and the club soccer and the club lacrosse and the high school sports and all that. But it is kind of crazy to think Alex is 33 and started when he was 5. So we've been doing this for 28 years with him, and then John is 30 and he's been doing it as well. But John's been over in St. Louis for work for about 8 years, and then making the long trip over to try and race when he can, but he's back in Columbus. And so a little different year for us, but we're excited about that. The bottom line to all this, I have fun. I enjoy it. All aspects of it. The fact that I still get to hang out with my 33-year-old and 30-year-old sons on Saturday night in some godforsaken little town in the middle of nowhere at a dirt track with a bunch of people that we love and have fun hanging out with is a pretty darn good deal. So.
Well, and that kind of wraps up really what we're talking about is what you can be guaranteed for the USAC Midwest Thunder Midget Series season is that it's going to be competitive, and there's going to be a lot of good racing on hand. I mean, like I said, look at the schedule, and it's just stock full of great tracks. So I can't wait to see you guys run, and I know a lot of other people feel the same.
Good. Well, thank you. We hope a lot of people come out. Obviously, it's on all of us to support our local dirt track scenes so that those promoters can continue to do what they do to allow us to go out there and have fun. So I know there's a lot of streaming options. We're always excited when we're on one of the streaming channels so that people can watch us from the privacy of their home. But I really don't think you can replicate the experience to be there in person. And we always want to encourage people to do that whenever they can. So hope to see all your listeners out to a race at some point this year. Stop by, say hi. Always happy to have people come down and look at the cars and talk to us about them.
Most definitely. Most definitely. As we're wrapping this up, do you have any sponsors you want to put out there, or where can everybody follow you guys on social media?
Yeah, I mean, Chuck and I, we're not social media gurus. I am pretty proud of what we've got on Facebook. It's the only social media that we do because there's only so much time in the day to do the day jobs and do all the other things the race series requires us to do. But I do think it's important. My goal for this year, as it has been for a few years, is to really give our drivers the exposure that they deserve. They're putting in their time and effort. I want to make sure that people get the chance to know these guys and gals the way that I do, the way that I get to interact with them, and that's what brings us to the track at the end of the day, right? We love racing. We love the competition, the cars and all that, but it's always been about the backstory and the heroes, whether we know the whole story or not. We create it in our heads probably half the time, but we decide we like this guy or this girl and we want to follow their careers. And I just think they deserve the opportunity. And social media is a great way to get that out. So we try and do a lot with the pictures, with the race results, any way we can. So yeah, absolutely. Ask your viewers to go check us out on Facebook. We do have a website. It's kind of for the technical stuff. So it's got rules, it's got the schedule, it's got the points. That's MidwestThunderMidgets.com. But the Facebook USAC Midwest Thunder Midgets is going to be the place to go. And I try to make sure that we have in the off season 3 or 4 posts a week, updating everybody. But they're probably sick of it come race night because we're going to have pictures there of every heat race winner, our fast qualifier, our B main winner, our feature winner, our hard charger, our Rosewood machine and tool precision move of the night winner, all that stuff. We're going to make sure we get out there. So yeah, check us out there. Come out and visit us at the track, and look forward to having a great 2025.
Greg, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a privilege talking to you, and looking forward to running into you sometime here in 2025.
Well, we appreciate all you do, all you guys that do the podcast, and just for your love of racing, spend your time and your effort to help all of us. It's a privilege for us that you're willing to do all of that. So thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Guys, this is Josh with the Dirt Court Jesters podcast, and we hope to see you at the track.